we had this member of the WGA that wrote an open letter to the WGA that resulted in a flood of emails, not just from WGA members, but also from people from other crafts like the Art Directors Guild, IATSE, people from IATSE. Like I'm already working on a part 2 to that, a follow-up, because every day is like a new leak of info, but I don't know if we're going to see a pushback because none of these people are willing to speak on the record, and there are no trade publications willing to write this story because they're just as compromised when it comes to the types of people writing the story. So I just prefer honesty about all this stuff. You can't look at what's happened in the industry. You've seen your industry go from $7 billion movies in 2019 to, was it 1 last year? Oppenheimer, if it passes $1 billion, I guess. Do you count that as 2023? Barbie was the biggest box office film of last year. Right. So it's very interesting what's transpiring.
Yeah. I mean, it fits neatly into the leaks that Elon Musk shared regarding the inclusion standards guidelines that were set out. And it's very interesting because it covers everything from on-screen representation to creative leadership, below-the-line staff, and industry access even. So the people that you even hire into your organization. And I just thought this was kind of an interesting one to look at. So if we talk about on-screen representation, I could just give you a quick rundown of what's in this guidelines booklet. Characters.
Before you do that, I think the most interesting part of that is what it says at the bottom, where it says that if you are in a hiring position, you cannot ask anybody about any of these particular groups, because that would be illegal. So what you have the WGA, which Chris Gore showed the sheet for, the hiring practices, where everybody ticks their boxes to make a database of what everyone is. Yes. And then it allows Disney to search that database for who they want, but also avoid the legal requirement of you can't ask anybody about it. Yes. So they can still dodge the law, but do what the law was intended to stop, which is discriminate people against hiring.
And this is straight up discrimination if we read it here.
Yes.
Characters. On-screen representation. 50% or more of regular and recurring written characters must come from underrepresented groups. Actors. 50% or more of regular and recurring actors must come from underrepresented groups, which is completely out of line with the demographic makeup of America or any other country for that matter. Secondary characters, meaningful inclusion of underrepresented groups as secondary or more mirror on-screen individuals, including background actors. Series premise, meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in overall themes and narratives. Episodic storytelling, ongoing meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in episodic themes and narratives. So regardless of what your story is actually about, you have to meaningfully integrate underrepresented groups into your story, even if it's got nothing to do with them. And when they say meaningful integration, I know exactly what it means. It means positive depictions of them, because they can't possibly be depicted in a negative manner.
And it literally wipes out an entire range of, not only historical stories, but entire genres. You could not tell a story about the Romans under those ideas, because it'd just be Italians.
Well,
you can't tell a story about
don't you
Italians.
know the Roman Empire was 50% black and lesbian?
According to the BBC, from what I've seen of their historical dramas. But this is the thing. You either destroy history and entirely change what happened before, or you can't tell the story. And it handcuffs people to basically modern day stuff.
Or you do what the BBC does and you pretend that history was completely different from what it actually was and just hope that everyone buys into your lies.
Sounds like Cleopatra on Netflix.
Yeah.
Sounds like that Doctor Who special.
Well, I mean, if you look at the Oscars,
with Isaac Newton.
The Oscars are coming up in a couple weeks. It's March 10th. We're going to be doing a watch party. I hope you check. You can suffer through the Oscars watching it with us. But, these standards that they put about diversity in the industry, there are so many past Oscar winners that would never be qualified. A movie like Dunkirk, a recent Oscar-nominated movie, would not even qualify under these rules to be nominated for Best Picture. The new rules that they have instituted, it's ridiculous. You can't, if you start to police art, that to me is it. I mean, not to mention the airline industry. I don't know if you've seen what's come out recently within the last day about the airline industry and trying to apply DEI to
it's too white. It's too white.
This is
Because I don't know about you, if I'm flying,
madness.
I'm hurtling through the sky at hundreds of miles per hour at 40,000 feet. I definitely want a person who was chosen by the color of their skin or their sexuality to fly me instead of like someone who's actually good at their job.
This was the same with firefighters too. They were complaining that firefighters are too white in America. It's like no one is stopping people from applying. If a certain
And
group
that's
happens
the
to
thing.
apply,
No one ever
I-
complains when like certain jobs are only women based, like nursing, for example, or
Right,
teachers. It's
right.
only ever a problem when women aren't dominant in another thing. It's so
Right.
ridiculous.
Or
I
even
knew a
same
fi-
with garbage men. People never complain. And yes, you can say garbage men because 99% of garbage carriers are men. And nobody ever complains there because it's such an unpalatable job that they're happy that there's no proper representation of women in that job.
the
Hashtag
Garbage,
more
you mean-
women
you mean-
in sewers?
well, you got to be careful. You mean garbage person? I think that
Yeah.
well,
Where you
it's,
wanna
it's,
go
Well, it's
with
like
that.
it's only
It's
it's only an
careful.
important thing when it's the big, sexy corporate jobs that pay like
That's
a lot of
right.
money and require you to do nothing more strenuous than sit behind a desk and complain about things. Like that's where they want them to be included.
And I
I
just
was
wanted-
going to.
I just
Sorry.
wanted to make a quick point. Sorry, about the move to Canada. It just kind of occurred to me. I think one of the reasons why why would Disney choose that versus let's say a country like Romania or anything in
Korea.
or Korea. I think anything else would have seemed like they're taking a step back from their woke ideology because with Canada you can't really make that argument since they are actually far woker than we are, than America is, and I think that's sort of their way to punish Burbank, like you said, Chris, but
Yeah.
also get tax benefits and still claim that they have no plans to change any ideology that they've
The thing is with
inflicted on
Canada
their
I
own
don't know. Like
company.
if they like hired it like a studio in Korea, it's like, well, you've got all the representation of ethnic minorities that you could ever ask for. That's like
Right.
amazing for them. you
But
know?
Koreans
They
don't
don't-
fall in line with
That's
with
true, yeah.
ideology. So
They don't include those in the groups. Very often, the
Interesting.
entire category of like sort of that Asian category is ignored. There's even been like all the acronyms and stuff. At one point, one was created specifically to exclude people like Korea and Japan from it because they do too well. It like there's a whole. This is one of the things. It's like quicksand. When you start digging into it, the more you go in, the more deeper it gets because it turns out what people say they want isn't actually what they want, and they were willing to say whatever is required to get the desired outcome. And it's more about the desired outcome than the words or whatever they purport to support. Which is
Well,
why
speaking-
going to something like Canada is that, because if they went to Korea, it would actively act against them, despite the fact that it would make them more money.
Hey,
Yeah,
Baggage
Canada-
Claim.
Speaking of the
sorry.
desired outcomes as well, I was going to like refer to the second section of this just inclusion standards booklet, because when we wonder about why so many TV shows and so on are absolute garbage now, especially in companies like Disney, I think we got some of our answers here. 50% or more of the producer and above on writing staff, and 50% or more of the co-producer and below on the writing staff must come from underrepresented groups. I wonder. Yeah, I wonder why so many Disney Plus shows are absolute dog shit now.
What?
it all
That
makes
explains
sense
that,
now.
though.
Yeah.
50% or more of episodic directors must come from underrepresented groups. Casting director is from an underrepresented group or has not previously worked on a DGE show in this role.
That's
So
my
they
favorite
must-
one.
The casting director must come from underrepresented group. You can't,
Well-
essentially a white guy can't be in that role.
Well, I know
far as
it-
that's
it's
Standards, by
underrep-
those standards, sorry, I was going to just say, by those standards, you are going to be forced to hire someone who fulfills a checkbox that is not necessarily qualified but fulfills the checkbox. And I do
No
want to
experience.
baggage claim. I have to give you credit. You just said something just out of the blue that I think should be popularized. You said the far woke. I feel like the far woke could be like a new term. The far woke, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Why
You
not?
heard it here first
You
at
know,
Open Bar, and
we're part
it's
of the far
Baggage Claim
woke.
who gets the credit for it. Far woke.
Amazing. I didn't
far
even
world.
remember that I said that. I'll
You
take
said
your
it
word for it, Chris.
immediately. Yeah. Anyways.
But I like that they added into their very foundations of how you hire people. You either have to be underrepresented or have no experience doing the job at all. So you either have to be underrepresented or be complete crap because you've never done it. So you'll by definition be awful at it. Like there is
It's so
no
insane.
Yeah, at no point does anyone care about the quality or the entertainment. It's either you're going to be hired not for your talent, or you're going to be hired specifically because you have no talent in the role.
Well, here's an interesting one as well. Promotion of a member of an underrepresented group into a role that constitutes career progression for at least one member of the writing staff. So it's essentially fucking promote anyone from an underrepresented group. I don't care if they can do their job or not. Just promote them. Give them an extra job.
The failing upwards makes a lot more sense now, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
starts to make a lot more sense. And then substantial year-over-year increases in members of underrepresented groups as directors and in the writing staff.
See, this kind of stuff is it's not just ruining films, man. It's in video games too. I know people might know things about stuff called Sweet Baby Inc. That's what
Yes.
this is.
I saw your
what this
video.
all
I was
is.
listening to your video about it today, and it was really good.
Thank you.
Very insightful video on how they are slowly fucking destroying the video game industry. Essentially,
Everything.
any game that's had Sweet Baby Inc. consulting on the script writing for it, you can write it off essentially because it's going to be garbage.
Oh yeah, what about Ragnarok Drinker?
Did they actually have a meaningful contribution to that though?
In the
Because I
They
would
made
think
Anger
that-
Boda black.
they
That's what
said
they did.
they gave consultation, so it's up to you whether or not they were listened to, I guess.
I assume they weren't in that case.
Well, it would be
then.
weird if they were, considering how Kratos is not ruined. He's strong and he beats the fuck out of people, and he's a really good dad. It would be weird if they had, wanted that.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if their one piece of feedback was like, we should have a black character in it, and either
That's
that they turned
definitely what
Anger Boda
happened.
black. And
I
I'm
mean,
not.
I
I don't mind that character. Like, she was fine, but like,
She was
I
fine.
think if they
totally out of
introduced
place.
a plot point, I think it probably would have been that.
One thing you have to remember about all of this is it's incrementalism, and so just a small win at a time is enough. As long as we are constantly moving in the direction we want, that's enough for us. There's a lot of people who's like, we either have all of it or nothing, and it's like, no, the way it came over decades, this has been going on for a long time,
Yeah,
is literally
simply-
a small win at a time, and we always move in one direction.
Yes, and simply stopping it isn't enough because
No.
eventually they're going to push forward again. That's the problem. You push back; they'll eventually ask for too much, and so you push back a little bit and stop them in their tracks. And
Yes.
then eventually they know you're going to get bored, or you won't be paying attention.
And this is
and
why
they'll push
in
forward again.
every video I make, I always tell people, vote with your wallet. You have to.
Yeah.
It's the only way we're going to be able to stop these things, at least at some point. It's the only way you can do it.
And
So,
there-
vote with your wallet.
Sweet Baby Inc. They consulted on the Suicide Squad destroy or kill the Justice League.
Well,
Oh,
so this is kind of the problem. The worse the game
Don't get me
is,
started.
the more sort of effect you assume they had on it. But like, I warned this on Real BBC. I don't think we should make the mistake of making them too much the villain, like the Emperor here, when we've got plenty of Darth Vaders wandering around. Like, I don't think that we should be like, oh, it's Sweet Baby, because the second they go down, which seems inevitable to me, you shouldn't be like, we got him. It's like, dude, Rocksteady's done. Like,
Yes.
it's not just
Oh,
about
they're
Sweet
dead.
Baby Inc. Yeah, like they're
dead, yeah.
completely fucked.
You are responsible for your own actions, and so the company is responsible for the game they put out, and all the employees at that company are responsible for the game that they made. So
I mean, you could just put it into comparison. Think of it this way: like Spider-Man 1 made by Insomniac Games. No Sweet Baby Inc. attached to that. Spider-Man 1, I think a lot of people would agree, is objectively like one of the best Spider-Man games depictions of the character ever. He's strong, he's resourceful. In my opinion, like that's the Spider-Man I wanted in the MCU, but we got a little Iron Man instead, but whatever. Then you play Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is where Sweet Baby comes in. And Peter goes from the most powerful, strong, like adept version of the character to what I could only call a bitch. Like there's no other word I can really use for it. You know what I mean? There's a scene in that game where Venom backhands Spider-Man and he flies into a fridge and the fridge holds Spider-Man down. This is Spider-Man. This is the guy that can hold buildings and stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah, it'll be a fridging.
It drives me
reference.
nuts.
They'll think it's
Is
smart.
that a reference, like with the fridging and stuff? Maybe I don't know. I haven't
I'm
seen
sure it will
properly.
be. They'll think that's
Um,
really witty.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
a bunch of people have said like no, Mullen, no, wrong, and it's like you don't understand. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to explain. Like there are games that are horrendous that fit with this pattern that Sweet Baby Inc. haven't even touched. Just remember that the companies that surround this awful company are not let off the hook just as soon as they're gone.
No, this is a problem that permeates the whole modern gaming industry, at least in the West. This desire to rewrite history or to redress the balance in so many ways, and you see it in so many different games. Like Last
Yeah.
of Us 2 is probably a great example of it. And you could push back against it, but ultimately these games still make bank, and that's the problem.
The gaming industry will always be unique in that because gameplay has such a large impact that you can like a game for the gameplay and put up with the messaging compared to movies where the story is basically all you get. And so you may have actions.
And also with video games, you got to realize mostly the profits made immediately, right? You buy the game one time, you have the game. With a TV show, if DEI gets introduced over time, the show can do incrementally worse and worse with ratings, right? But thankfully with The Last of Us, at least when people brought that up, that game sold 44% less than the original game. And I think that's for good reason. Absolutely. And actually, the remaster of the first Last of Us sold, I believe, 18 million copies, and Last of Us Part 2 has only sold 10 million copies. Which is still great, by the way, but you know what I mean? Still less.